Bonjour à nouveau. Je suis vraiment ravie de partager ce moment avec vous, avec Lidewij Edelkoort et avec Studio Formafantasma, à savoir Andrea Trimarchi et Simone Faresin, qui sont assis à mes côtés. Donc, je me présente, je suis Juliette Paulet, conservatrice du patrimoine, en charge de la collection design et art décoratif au Centre national des arts plastiques. Bon, alors peut-être, au vu de l'audience, je vais me permettre de rappeler ce que c'est que le Centre national des arts plastiques. C'est un établissement public du ministère de la Culture qui a deux missions. Une mission de soutien aux artistes vivants par le biais de distribution de bourses et d'aides, et une mission de collectionneur. Le CNAP gère à présent une collection de plus de 95 000 objets élaborés depuis la Révolution française. Et au sein de cette collection, il y a un fonds dont je m'occupe, le fonds design, 6500 pièces collectionnées de manière systématique avec des commissions d'acquisition spécialisées chaque année qui se réunissent depuis le début des années 80. Donc aujourd'hui, j'ai la joie d'avoir réuni trois personnes importantes sur la scène du design contemporain. Tout d'abord, Lidewij Edelkoort. Donc, Lidewij Edelkoort, quelqu'un qui a navigué entre différentes scènes, entre l'art contemporain, le design, la mode, la pédagogie, les tendances, qui aujourd'hui dirige l'agence de tendance Trends Union, qui a fait partie de la commission d'acquisition du CNAP entre 2009 et 2011. Et en fait, moi, quand je suis arrivée à mon poste, j'ai inventorié les pièces qu'avait choisi Li, qu'avait défendu Li pour le patrimoine français. Et c'est par ce biais que j'ai découvert son travail et que j'ai eu envie de l'inviter à collaborer plus précisément sur notre collection. Et donc, j'ai invité Li à une carte blanche sur la collection de design du CNAP. Cette carte blanche est aujourd'hui présentée à la Gaîte lyrique. C'est l'exposition Oracle du design, que j'espère vous avez tous vu ou que vous allez bientôt voir. C'est vraiment l'occasion de voir une des plus grandes sélections de design en ce moment à Paris. Il y a plus de 250 objets réunis dans une parade pleine de gaieté, de fantaisie et de sens, voilà, que je vous invite vraiment à découvrir. C'est jusqu'au 7 août. Et puis Studio Formafantasma, donc un duo de designers d'origine italienne, basé à Amsterdam, enseignant à Eindhoven, récemment acheté par le CNAP l'année dernière, quelques objets que vous allez pouvoir découvrir, et également visibles au sein du parcours d'Oracle du Design. C'est les photos que vous voyez défiler derrière moi. L'exposition est organisée en 10 thèmes et leurs objets sont réunis dans le terme archaïque. Donc aujourd'hui, on va vous introduire à leur travail, à la façon, et puis un discours critique en fait qui s'articule autour de cette création. J'ai tout d'abord laissé Li Edelkoort en anglais vous citer quelques extraits d'un texte qu'elle a écrit sur Andrea et Simone, qui s'appelle Art Deco. Art Deco en deux mots, c'est un jeu de mots entre ce mouvement de l'histoire de l'art et du design et les questions d'écologie. Et puis Studio Formafantasma va présenter un peu plus précisément son travail, et enfin nous allons engager la discussion. Et le reste de la présentation se fera en anglais. Voilà.
That's new. Since the turn of the century, the world has experienced an emerging revival of craft in reaction to the information revolution. Disgust for a boring global market and fear of virtualization have inspired designers to offer work that is linked to the important humanization of the making process. Thus, craft has positioned itself to become one of the major movements of our time. The handmade is able to speak of personalization, collaboration, sharing of ideas, and the return of local production, and promotes the survival of important endangered skills. Craft can be seen as the repetition of skills that belong to our common past. Therefore, we feel a sense of belonging and continuity, especially in such a beautiful environment. You can feel this. The work of Studio Formafantasma is an important reference in this new area. By applying craft techniques to natural materials, they are embedded in memory. Andrea and Simone are able to wander into fantasy and indulge in research while mastering their artistic skills in the same way that the craft guilds once created universal objects of beauty. They were born in the early 80s, and they are romantic men reaching maturity in the turn of the century, when we started the 21st century. We can understand from their work that they are really children of the millennium, and that therefore they are very rooted in tradition and a bit of nostalgia for a beautiful past. And exactly as in the period 100 years ago, their use has been difficult. We live in a difficult period, governed by chaos and uncertainty, with political scandals, football scandals today, economic downfall, and general super fear of the future. And exactly like 100 years ago, this uncertainty, this uncertain age, has seen the blooming of a new form of design. And this design is discarding function, but couples it, isn't a discarding function, but marries it with beautiful organic form and innovative material research. Material is one of the most important aspects of design today. Material is so much a focus, I believe, because we have so many screens in our life. We still use one finger to animate the screen, and soon maybe only voice. And so we need tactility to sort of train the fingers, because we don't use them anymore. So I feel that the more screens we will have in the future, the more we need materialization. It's almost like a balance. The designers consider the forces of nature as natural partners in the process of creation, and the materials of the planet as the natural skin of their products. They have embraced our earth like they have each other, for better or for worse, until death do them part. Because it's very unique and unprecedented, they came to the Design Academy and for the master program and inscribed themselves as one under Formafantasma, and they were accepted as one. They paid tuition for one, and they got graduation for one. So it's very unique to see in this world where people want to be more together, work together, exchange, which is the end of the individual area, that they have decided to become one. They speak as one softly focused voice, functioning like the two brain halves of one unique personality. Relating to each other as one and used to working together, they have started to work with other people, skilled artisans like glass blowers, wood carver, broom maker, bread maker, leather tanner, textile weaver, color chemist. So they have always been interested also to pick up knowledge and pick up know-how from skilled other people. The culture of lava, the benefits of charcoal, the history of leather, the inventions of new polymers, new plastics, the dyeing of madder, the molding of dough to make bread, the mystery of ceramics, the tradition of weaving are all the disciplines used to explore and do research in the local versus the universal. They will show beautiful examples soon on stage. As witnessed in design from 100 years ago, in Formafantasma's work, the exotic and the primitive are explored, The foreign and the folkloric are researched. And inherited knowledge and beauty are rekindled, so they look again at beauty as an important aspect. They impart a timelessness to the objects that elevates them from simple functional design pieces to objects of contemplation, objects you like to sort of sit and experience. One particularity of their way of working is that it contains many artistic elements, such as painting and sketching, primitive aquarelles and repetitive printed patterns and engravings, for instance, on wool. Their body of work is therefore a new decorative direction within the craft. And therefore, I call it Art Deco, eco. So it's not really art decorative, it has also a very important ecological component. Because what used to be bakelite in the 1920s is the new polymer in their presentations. The very expensive galucha becomes discarded fish skin today. Parchment is reborn as a cow bladder, and lacquer is replaced by coating and baking. So all the disciplines, all sort of major disciplines from the Art Deco period are reintroduced today, but with an ecological core to the thinking. Their linear forms recall the 20s, the Roaring 20s. The masks looks maybe cubist. There is a sort of echo, but the designers delve into research. Their whole body of work is about research, immersing themselves in science, botany, history, cataloging. Like men living in an embryonic time frame, they are able to roam freely from topic to topic, making poetic and aesthetic statements, but that also dissect very important political issues, because the work is also, I think, very much engaged. Like an archaeology of man-made disasters, their design narrates in quiet yet strangely imposing manner how things went wrong with colonialization, deforestation, collaboration with the enemy, industrialization, and urbanization. So somehow, let's say, hidden in the poetry of the work, you always will detect a real engaged political vision. And that makes it very much belonging to the arts and crafts movement, which always used to have a social component to be very important. The hope and humanity within their creations, a vision of an other and braver world, speaks clearly of a moral future with new ideals and a spiritual approach, defining a design discipline on its way to utopia. And this is what I see them sharing also with their young students. So please tell us more.
Thank you, Li. That was really great introduction.
Hi, my name is Simone.
My name is Andrea. I forgot about that.
Our studio name is called the Formafantasma. I will try to speak slow, if that might help. We decided with the presentation to show you just the selections of works, 3 projects, and to tell you more how we started to be interested in design and how we got to know each other and work together. I come from the northeast of Italy, so me and Andrea are both Italian, but our studio is based in the Netherlands. And this is where I come from. In winter it's very boring and I couldn't stand to live there when I was a kid. I thought it was horrible. And that place is also famous because of production. There's a lot of productions of furniture happening in the north of Italy, but it's not how I got in contact with design, because my father was actually a farmer. But it was more when I started studying in an art school when I was more or less 15. Then my teachers there introduced me to design, and I became a design freak. And instead of having posters of pop bands in my room, I had the poster of an Italian designer called Enzo Mari in my room. And the title of the poster, which was an exhibition of this designer, was Il lavoro al centro, that means the work at the center. And this title, we decided to include it in the presentation because it is still very important for us to keep this at the center of our work, to keep the working and, in a way, the craft still at the core of our practice.
While Simone grew in a horrible place, I grew up in a really beautiful, sunny place that is Sicily, in the south. My experience with design is really the opposite of Simone's, because in Sicily there's no any tradition related to industrial production. Actually, the only production that is still happening there is the one of crafts, as you can see here on the right, of the production of ceramic in Caltagirone. And while Simone was probably going to dancing club, I was like more doing folk event within the city. So something that is really relevant, I feel in the south of Italy, is the fact that craft and I would say also rural craft and tradition is still really rooted into the society there.
Then when we were more or less 19, we both decided to move to Florence to study design. And the reason why we chose Florence and not Milan, which is more famous for design in Italy, is because we were interested in radical design that developed in the 70s as a result of the political turmoils of the 60s. Radical design, we always thought it was interesting because it was using design and architecture as a way of envisioning future and possible changes within society. So we're interested in design as this tool to envision change and embedding also some political and social content in it. But then when we reached there, it was the 90s and the situation was completely different.
Yeah, indeed, like the reality was really the opposite what we expected. Because when we went to Florence to study at the, let's say, the radical school, what we were thinking to do is to rethink objects. So, for instance, we put as an example the broom. So we were rethinking almost to rethink about, for instance, the idea of like brooming, of cleaning. While what we were asked all the time is just to redesign, like the electrical straw broom or the vacuum cleaner. So the kind of approach was really the opposite of what we were expecting.
So in that moment, me and Andrea, we started losing interest in design. We didn't care to approach design that way. We wouldn't participate in that way of adding objects to the world till the moment that me and him, we met. And we started spending our time together, sharing our life together. And without even knowing, we started talking again about design. But from a much more intimate perspective. And that's the reason why we decided to add this slide of a photo that I took of him from the back while we were in Sicily. And then we started traveling around and visiting different places. And of course, we were going to the Milano's Design Salone. And that's where we started to know more what was happening in Holland, in the Netherlands, with design. And there we felt the voice of a generation which was much closer to us. And we felt that there we could be doing design again. And that's the reason why, as Li mentioned, we decided to apply with one portfolio for two and to apply as a team, which for us was not even, when we got there, we realized that it was a strange thing. But for us, it was totally normal. We just thought it was okay. And we didn't really think about rules and stuff like that. And then Gijs Bakker, which was the director of the master, he told us that then they checked in the rules and they realized that there wasn't a rule about that. And then, and then we graduated together. And then in the same year, we opened our own design studio, which is called Formafantasma, which means ghost shape in Italian. And it is just a reference of the way we work. We just wanted to point out that our way of working, despite of course it formalizing objects, and it has a form, but that is not the point of the way we work. We don't sit down at a table and we start to draw forms. That's not how we work. Our work is based off research or an investigation into materials. And the
discussion, that's I think that's an important pictures, and you know, most of the time, as Simone said, we don't sit and draw. We just discuss. Actually, we fight a lot, and this is like a really Italian way of saying, what are you talking about? And as you see, like on the other side, Simone is not even care about what I'm saying, but this is like how it works. It's about discussing and try to find agreement together, I would say. But in a way, most of the people ask us, which role do you have within the company or within the studio? And we always say that we don't have any precise role, even if I'm more the one probably that take decision. So I'm the more analytical one, while Simone is the one that lose all the time the point and start thinking or dreaming. I'm more the one more grounded probably than him.
Our work is conceptual, with a focus on material and historical investigations. This is a very simple and short sum up of our work. And we will just show you 3 projects and then we will open a discussion. But one important aspect of our work is looking back to look forward. We truly believe that in the past there are things we can learn and we can apply for the future. But what we don't mean in sense of style. Of course, we see in fashion and design the constant recycling of different forms coming from the past. We actually just believe that often the design discipline is focused on inventing the new or the next, while sometimes we need to learn on building what is already there. For instance, we got to know recently that concrete is it was a Roman invention. And then what the Romans didn't realize is that by placing steel on it, you would have had reinforced concrete. And that investigation stopped there. And then a century passed, and only with modernism, this material started to be used again, and then it changed completely the way we built our cities. Botanica, which is a project of 2011, is exactly in doing so, looking back to understand possible applications of plastics coming from plants and animals derivatives.
Yeah, we got this commission from this foundation in Italy called PLART, that is the only foundation in Europe that is dedicated to the restoration of plastic. Because even if we think plastic is a material of now, actually it's a material that's already more than 200 years of history. So the first time we got a call from the owner of the foundation, we almost say no, we don't want to deal with the plastic, because the only thing we had in mind is the downside, so the enormous patch in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But of course, this is a really naive approach. You should never say no. You should not have any time have any prejudice towards material.
So when we started working, we looked back in time to the early stages of when humans were looking for plastic. Plastic is in first place a quality of a material. And then at the beginning, between 18th and 19th century, scientists and inventors and craftsmen were looking to the natural world. So the collections of vessels that you see here are all built and constructed using resins coming from plants or animals. And this for us was a way to understand the possibilities that could come from nature. And we did this investigation both looking into actual knowledge, so collaborating with scientists, material historians, and experimenting directly in the studio via remelting some of these materials, which are still used in restoration. This is the way we work in the studios in a very intuitive way. And the forms of the pieces came naturally via working with the materials. So we started to keep all the deformities, the imperfections, and the organic shapes that was coming by the making. Two of the materials that we were most interested was natural shellac and bois d'Orsay. The shellac is the material which is produced by an insect. So it's an insect that colonizes trees, suck the sap from the tree, and sweat it out in a form of a more refined polymer. So we started thinking it would be great, as we have with silk, that we produce textile from a bag, that we could farm a plastic instead of, extracting from the soil. And we did further investigation into these materials, collaborating with a university, an agricultural university, Wageningen, in Holland. And we tested this material on a 3D printer. And the Bois d'Orsay, which is a mixture of sawdust and blood, we experimented with the scientists there in understanding if there is the possibility to use proteins discarded from agriculture for the construction of panels. So material research is an important component of our work. And another example is one of our latest work, which is an experimentation with lava.
Oh, go, you are doing so well. Please go ahead.
Because Andrea is Sicilian, we are often there for holiday. It's all the time happening the same. We think we need a break, then we go on holiday, and because we are relaxed, we start working again in our mind, just look at the world in a different way. And then we were visiting this place, which is the Etna volcano there, which is an active volcano. And then we saw, as we there in that picture, a lot of tourists going there. And then we saw, for the first time, this beautiful landscape that belongs to the Mediterranean part of Europe, which is all the time intended as entertainment for tourists. It's very beautiful, but no production is happening there. But for us, when we saw the volcano and the volcano in action, we started thinking that it was much more linked to production. This is what happens when the volcano erupts. The streets are completely covered with black matter. And we perceived the volcano as a mine with no miners, and we started wondering what we could do with this force of nature. And we found these images of the 70s, which is brilliant, because you see humans really trying to control nature in a matrix. And even if differently, this is what we did. We went there to the volcanology center, and we started to understand what is possible to do with the materials there. And then we also intuitively, again, started working with it on a metal foundry, and later with a glass blower in Venice. And then, because the material is so rich in silica, we started using the erupted lava as a form of glass. These are some of the images of the work. And in the final piece, we always embed a raw rock as a way of reminding to the user the sourcing of the material.
I think this is a good image to understand also how we work, because, for instance, this is one of the pieces we designed, so the shape is like kind of perfect, but this is the only one piece that came out like this, working with lava was so unpredictable that we could never get this shape again. But we accepted that in the process. So I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, for instance, this is one of the other vases we did, but they were like a collection of other 5 vases. The only survived one. They were all completely deformed and clunky. But the beauty of that was also because of this shape. But we decided to embed it, to embrace this diversity instead of trying to control it too much.
Or on the other side, we started to understand that the material was working better casted. So we started producing a series of little objects with casted lava. So we always know where we start, but we don't have ever any idea where we are going to end with the work.
Yeah, if you come a week before the opening of the exhibition, it's always the messy one.
And then we also work with local producer there, because that's also important for us to work also with what is already existing and with local craftsmen. And then we did this series of objects using basalt, coffee tables, stools, and textiles, where we wave together cotton with lavic fibers, because from lava you can also produce a fiber which is similar to carbon fiber or glass fiber, but instead of using from its technical possibility, we use it more for its expressive potential. So the dark parts in the white textile is the Slavic fiber, and then we wave together a scientific representation of a macroscopical view of lavic stone, together with reference to the mythology of the volcano. Another very important part in our work is as an inspiration is vernacular objects and the rural world as archetypes that we always go back when we need inspiration, also in the use of materials, and challenging cliché and stereotypes. So for instance, Craftica, which is a commission from Fendi, the fashion house, was a work about this. We learned in the process it was a work about this because the client, Fendi, asked us if we could work with their discarded leather. And then we said, yes, we can do that, but we also want to implement our own selections of skins in your selection. And working there with their craftsmen, which they are doing a brilliant work, we also understood, or we noticed how the idea of quality is somehow distorted, because with leather you always look how soft it is, how it adapts to your body, but often you don't consider what it's needed to reach that kind of quality. So, for instance, we prefer to use vegetal tanned than chemical tanned leather, and we implemented in our selections leathers which are usually considered less precious, like fish skins, discarded from the food industry, which are often used to imitate other skins, or they are tanned in a way to lose the original colors.
And also here in the construction of the piece, we try to leave the material as raw as possible. So for instance, the differences between, in terms of shape, between one stool and the other is dictated by the size of the fish skin. So like, as you can see here, the perch leather or the salmon leather, the perch is a big fish, so the stool is bigger, while the salmon one, it's really tiny, so the shape is dictated again from the process.
And there's a way also to discard it as less leather as possible. This is also the way we work. We sketch using collages, and so you see the collage, very rough one, and the final piece. And then the whole work became about the relationship with the food industry and the leather making, which was something very sensitive for the client, because no companies that works with leather want to remind their clients that what they are wearing is a dead animal. But we thought there's nothing wrong with that, but you just need to accept that link. So we embedded in the work, for instance, bones and bladders, which are skins that has a fantastic quality to be very resistant. You can inflate with a chandelier that you see on the left, using animal bladders and water containers. So this is the very short presentation and a selection of our work, but it's just to show you our approach to design. And maybe now we can have a conversation about it.
I would like to start the discussion maybe around this picture. So this is the end of the exhibition. It ends with the theme, archaism. And we can recognize here two pieces of the Botanica collection standing on the table at the center. And Craftica is just behind the paravent, just behind the counter. And I would like to ask the three of you what this term, what this concept of archaism is meaning for you. What is the perception you have of this word? So maybe Li can explain a little bit what she thinks about that, what she sees in that, and maybe for you what it echoes.
We have seen the last maybe 10-15 years that certain designers are interested in more in the beginning of time than in our time. And possibly this is because we are admiring the first people on Earth and how they could design themselves new dwellings, new textile, new tools, new instruments. Because it gives you also a lot of hope about our future. It gives you sort of confidence that the human species is able to design itself out of the mess. This is why I think a more primitive approach to materials and even objects is at this point happening as a counterbalance also to the virtualization and the sort of futurization of shape, which wants to be immaterial, and therefore here we are hugely material as a counterbalance. But for me personally, it is about coming to terms with being human, because I think now today it's very hard to be human, because people are so violent and so barbaric, that I draw energy from the beginning of man to give me hope of the survival of our species. That is a very personal thing, but that's what I understood gradually.
Yeah, what I like about the archaic reference is that it's like doing a ground zero. It's like cleaning up centuries of history and going back to something which is a language that is connected to function, which is connected to survival, and it is understandable at the same time globally, but at the same time is perceived as very local.
Yeah, it's a universal style probably from that time, you know. And what I also really love is the low impact that has in society. I think, you know, like once they were like killing an animal, feed themselves and creating like tools for the body. And I really love this really one-to-one scale between production and consumption and needs. And I think that's really what I'm interested in archaism, I would say. This really, again, approachable and one-to-one scale relation, yeah.
We are here at the Festival of Art History in a very scholar context with a researcher or future researcher. But as for me, the three of you are also researchers in a way. And maybe I would like to ask to know more about your methodology in your exactly. Because Li, I think you're a researcher, of course. You're both an archaeologist and a visionary. And maybe you can tell a bit more our young audience about your methodology. And also for you, research, it's a word, it's a term that you pronounce a lot in your presentation, and it has various significations, various aspects, and so maybe we could know a little bit more about that as well. You first.
Well, for us, research is fundamental because it is about finding out more than starting from preconceived ideas. Doing a research is a way to opening up to possibilities more than starting from something that you already know. And it always works for us in two ways. One part is intuitive, and the other one is more, well, it's not scientific, but it's much more structured. And in between, there is the discussion between me and Andrea. So for us, our process of investigating ideas is like a process of filtering things. So we start very open when we work on a topic or on an investigation, and then the meaning or the ideas, it comes, it raises up from working. So while at the beginning we are very open, then it filters down, and it's like a funnel, and it gets more and more and more focused. And only when we finish the work, then we understand fully what we were doing in the process. So it is this ping pong between rational and intuition.
Yeah. Indeed, like one of the elements that I think is really important when you do research is that you must be aware and open to take other paths. You know, you get influenced by what you find in your path. So you can't just sit and think about a linear process. It's not working like that. And I think it's the same probably for Li. And you need to accept what it comes. It's really organic, I would say.
And you need to understand it. Sometimes when we were working on Botanica, then we were looking at these materials, and then we didn't like them. But it's not about liking something, it is about understanding it and understanding its nature. It's almost like when you have an ugly pet, and in the beginning you just think it's ugly, but then you discover that it's not like that, it's much more sophisticated. And you just need to take the good of it and raise it up.
In my case, research is ongoing, so it's like my whole life is a continuous research. And what you said is also so true, that once you have finished a work, in my case a book on trends and perspectives, it's sometimes much longer after that I really understand what it's all about. I believe I understand, but then again there is other meanings which are hidden in the layers. And this was also so interesting in the exhibition of oracles, is that it was not my intention at all in the beginning to discover what each piece had to tell us, but gradually through the research of the work, and because we called it oracles, I started to be interested in what each object finally has to say. And I understood gradually that the designer, when he designs in 1980 one piece, he has something to say about 1980 and the situation, and he gives the material and the form. Then when the object becomes the ownership of some client, some consumer or collector, the collector is putting something of himself in this object also. So the vision of the object changes. Then, when the objects get older and there's a new period, we are able to see in the same object something truly new, belonging to our society. And then even tomorrow, we can look at it again and again and again. So it's almost spooky that within one object, you have layers of information which are somehow presumed by the designer. So the designer is at the beginning, so he has a sort of hunch, like this is where we will go. But the object itself seems to be completely outdoing the initial approach. And this is, I think, what is the strength of material. I believe by now, after doing all this work together with Juliette and the team, is that there is maybe a force of nature in material itself. And that actually the material has energy, so a material has an aura. So if you could look at auras, you would see that that work has it's emanating some sort of energy or light. And so there is things we yet don't understand, but philosophy today and other research is definitely turning towards materials as almost an independent body, something in itself, like animals are a category, material is a category, and they believe that maybe material will live longer than us because we are killing ourselves. And so that material has maybe a force to reckon with, which has longevity. So it's a very new question. This is how you go on and on and on, because you learn and then you go from another thing and then you take a detail, you research, and then it brings you into another road, and constantly you evolve researching. It's like walking, I think. Walking and thinking at the same time.
Beautiful. Yeah. Definitely true.
Thank you, Li, for this perspective. It's always making me so dreamy. Maybe looking at this picture again, we see a lot of signs pointing to Africa, to other continents. Well, we can see this landscape at the end of the podium. We can see this mini architecture from Brazil, of the Brother Campana, La Cabana, this big hairy shelf in the podium, or other object playing with this ornamental vocabulary of Africa, of other civilization, primitivism. And I would like to ask Andrea and Simone about how they inscribe themselves in a post-colonial context, because I know you have a work on this subject, and I think it's something that really matters now.
A very complicated question. I think, well, first of all, we are a generation that has the chance to experience Europe as a united series of countries. So, and we have the chance to travel the world, which in a way that is much easier than the past. And I think we are growing a perspective which is global, thank God. And then we have the perception that the land and the planet is finite. And via realizing this, then you start to take responsibility, or you feel the responsibility for the way we mistreated places, we constructed a world which is unfair, and then colonialism is part of that. And strangely enough, we got in contact with this via design, because we did two projects which are about the impact of colonialism and how design can be used as a tool to shape or to change a culture or to impose a culture on another. And well, usually these are not issues which are discussed within the design world, or not commonly. But I think more and more people like us, or also our students, you see that they don't use anymore design as a way, just as a positivist tool, which is about saying like, oh, the future is going to be bright and beautiful, but also saying the future is difficult and our past was even sometimes worse. So we sometimes use design as a way of discussing these complex issues, and because objects are the manifestation of culture. So, well, I'm not sure I replied to your question, but I elaborated a bit of that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, indeed. Like I was also. I mean, I think your perspective is good, but I'm also sometimes like wondering how nations are dealing with identity or national identity, like especially related to certain disciplines. So when you speak about Italian design, Dutch design, French design, you are in a global context where this notion of nation is like getting into a more colonial attitude. What I mean to say, when you go to Milan or during the Salone, you see, like the pavilion of French design, or the area where there are Dutch designers. In still in European context where everything should be unified, I see this one as a kind of colonial attitude.
We disdain that usually.
Yeah.
We hate when, for instance, there is people try to understand our work if it is more Dutch or more Italian, and we get irritated by that because we believe it is highly ignorant to look at design from that perspective. Which I'm not saying that there is not like a national component or an impact of a place.
Definitely.
We still are humans which absorb the influences of the things around us. We just don't believe it is relevant to look at design from that perspective.
What do you think about that, Li? That you are a citizen of the world and you see all this scene. You work as a director at the Eindhoven Academy, so you know also this question very well. What do you think about this last sentence?
There is this, unfortunately, backlash of the globalization is that people start to be very afraid of the global and of the impact of the global, and therefore become very patriotistic and try to label whatever they do, which is nonsensical in a way, because we are there's no frontiers in internet, there's no frontiers in money going around, there's no frontiers in music going around the planet. There's already so many, food is like, global. So there are so many domains where there is already a universal opinions. And it's bizarre, but for instance, betterave is now a fashionable food in Japan, and in America, and in France, and in Holland, and in Scandinavia. So it is existing worldwide, domains. And then people still want to hold on to their own unique point of view. It's quite silly. And as far as Dutch design is concerned, I think that it's called Dutch design because it's a mentality of design. It's a way of thinking about design, which was, let's say, initiated in the Netherlands because of education, but also because the musea in the Netherlands, the Zuiderzee Museum and the Tilburg Textile Museum and the Groningen Museum and the Maastricht, several museums have requested young designers to think about the skills of the past, the making of blue delft, the making of, all sorts of metal work, the decoration of cupboards, so they invited young designers to rethink the past. And that has created a very strong sort of move towards craft and decoration and new inspirations, which finally have crafted the idea of Dutch design. But now you can say that Dutch design is Nacho Carbonell and is Formafantasma and is many other foreign names, French guys also, because it is the mentality. It has become a way of doing things, a way of research, a way of materialization, a way of not discarding the past but including. And I think, it is a quality. And in France, for instance, with such an enormous heritage, it is not used enough in education and in the go-between musea and so on. It's unfortunately not always happening. Good example in this picture is it's hard to see, but in the front you have this glass with sticks directly from the forest. That's a work by five designers. It's made with a French company of radiators, I guess, heating, the radiateur. And so they were allowed by this company to use glass as a vector of heat. And they make this extraordinary radiator, which is, coming from the collaboration of a traditional company with new design. And this is where I think many new things can be born. And then you overcome, the national borders. But don't forget that even between Lille and Paris and Bordeaux, there is racism. And there is between Amsterdam and Rotterdam, and they think of each other as very different species. So man needs to be somehow belong. It's quite childish.
The three of you are deeply implicated in pedagogy, in educational program. So you two teach at Eindhoven, and you are always teaching somewhere. Yeah. So maybe again, before starting to ask the audience if they have some question, I would like to ask what is the both about methodology and what is for you very important to teach today to young designers. What are
we
you
are
trying
young
to do?
designers, so let's start with that. So no, but I think what can be good to be teaching when there is not such a big gap in the generation is that you can understand better. The exchange between the students and yourself is sometimes easier. It is very difficult to do education in design in this moment because of all the complexity, because the discipline is becoming more and more complex. I think we realize that often students are looking at you as a mentor and looking for answers. They are looking for you as a way to find out how they should approach design. And that's never what you want to give back, because we realize we don't want to tell them what they should be doing. So the only way, which is sometimes frustrating for the student, is to ask them questions. That's the way we use to make them find out what they are interested in, is asking them questions. But it's very frustrating for them because not often they have answers. And so then the other chance when that is not working, the other possibility is then to tell them what to do, which is the opposite, and then they don't understand it, but via making them they will understand why you told them to do so. It's almost the opposite, but these are to very simplify the way we teach, but these are the two ways.
Yeah.
Can you remind us the name of the program you are teaching?
Well-being.
But it's all the program.
Yeah, there is something I think interesting, because I think it depends also where you teach. I mean, we have been teaching in Switzerland for a few months at the ECAL, or in France in other schools, sometimes also in Italy, doing some lesson. But I think the particularity of the teaching in Holland, I think, is something that you don't find it almost actually nowhere. Because it's really a free academy, so the structure is really open. You are not a teacher, you're a mentor. So it's about guiding the students. And also, what I really love from education in Holland is that, again, it's about freedom and it's about maturity. Indeed, like, I think one of the motto, I think it's not an official motto at the academy, but it's there. It's really up to you. Because and there you can reach really maturity. I remember, like, when I was studying in Italy and I was in the first 3 years of university, I was all the time asking as when I said to them, the teacher, what shall I do? While at the academy it's really the opposite, and that make you one, more competitive. So as soon as you graduate, you already are placed within the world. And 2, you understand how to deal with yourself and with the outside. So I think that's something that I really love from the academy. It's this maturity of the students.
It's a process.
Yeah, you need to create your own process.
I approach education like I approach everything else with the perspective of the future. So my own work helps me very much in designing new curriculums, new departments, or new ideas. So I always use these incentives and intuitions to install new ideas within the school I'm working. So in Design Academy, for instance, we created the men and well-being department because we had a department which was called Men and Basics, and nobody knew exactly what it was, like to make teapots and cups and so on. And so I knew from my studio that we had a lot of clients wanting to know what is the new fragrance, what is the new bottle, what is the new hotel, what is the new service, what is the new, how can we be well, how can we feel. So I felt from my own experience that this was going to be a very important field. We also started a restaurant for our students to do food design very early on. And we made a master called Man and Humanity to send students to other parts of the world to use design as a skill to create change. And recently, and now I'm working in Poland on a new school called School of Form. And there I had super opportunity to embed the design discipline in the humanities, because the Mother Institute is a university of humanities, and normally in design schools you will get a little hour of philosophy here. It's like pepper and salt, poivre et sel, un peu de philosophie, un peu de social studies, et tout ça. And so here I had all these professors teaching the human skills, and I thought, well, this is the super opportunity, because it's all about, the future is all about what people still want or not, and where they want to go, and how they want to experience rituals and things like that. So now this year is the first graduation, and it's quite amazing to see that especially the research part is very advanced. The best students, the top students, their research is like master thesis and not like bachelor thesis. It really works. So it's super interesting for the future. So we'll see.
When is going to happen, the graduation? Is it now?
Yeah, it's in 2-3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
I'm really excited to see.
The students, the whole option was to create designers to make the local furniture, because 40% of furniture in the world is made in Poland, but nothing is designed in Poland. But sure enough, not one student is making furniture. They all do very different things. So yeah, I'm super curious, but I already saw the green light, and I'm most interested in the process here. The process of thinking is radically new, and we have a very new, innovative industrial department. Industrial design is really making a comeback through the new technologies and so on. So there's not one department like this in the world. And this is where Eindhoven needs to rethink, I think. And they don't. They still think it's about mixers and toasters, and it's not. It's about the process again. Yeah.
Also in a moment in which there are new technology, and I really see that in most of our students they are not addressing this. I definitely agree.
We bought a robot. The first buy for the school was the robot. So the students learned to program the robot. And then we went to Milan, and then the students made, the robot was making cookies for the audience. And then the cookies were, the robot was making the dough, and then the dough was printed in 3D printer to make cookies. So it was immediately sort of an implementation, playful, of all these skills. And recently we bought a super high-tech cutting machine, and they needed to make small furniture without glue or screw. And I came and I looked at it, and it was Macintosh. Everything was Macintosh, because automatically when you have this possibility, the language. Yeah. So suddenly the artisan language became super high-tech industrial. And this is where something is happening super exciting. But I think this is the only institute discovering it at this point. Strange. Yeah, it's
because
cool.
you start from scratch, that's the good things.
Yeah, and it's also it's Oscar Zieta, who is the head of department. He's amazing. He's blowing up metal to become very light. So he gives you a sort of little pin, then you put it in the micro oven, then it becomes a big balloon of metal. You just cook your own pin. So he's very sort of inventive. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's really because of him. He's like amazing.
Wow. Really curious.
It's not something you have discussed now, but maybe I would really like to know because I'm kind of curious. Maybe it's not also a direction you would like to go into, but do you see yourself making products that a bigger crowd can afford at one point? And how do you then see the production of these products?
Good question.
Yeah, so industrial design we are talking about. We definitely want, and we are hopefully designing something for industry, but we will do it differently than our existing work, because they're two different body of works. So the necessities are different. We need to reach, if we do something with industry, then we will reach much more people. So I think what industry so far is still very good in doing is producing tools. So I think what we will design will be in that direction, and considering certain values that I think should be there, like sustainability, possibly local production, but we haven't found a partner in the industrial context which is still very interesting for us.
Really good companies, but not so open to change their way of thinking. But I also think that at the moment, the furniture industry is
not interesting.
It's really boring. You can't, of course, some of the company are like using new materials, but the kind of change, it's really minimal. I think other industry, as the fashion one or engineering one, there are other industry, they are much more open in changing. Medical, I think there are, and the interesting part of this specific moment in time is that design is a really open up discipline. So you can, designing furniture probably is the most boring things that you can do at the moment.
Or as Li was saying, maybe you need like different business model, different way of producing things. Like for instance, once we were speaking with a company which is doing a lot of things in wood. And then we asked, so where is your wood coming from? And they didn't know. So
it was
that is already
the biggest furniture company produced wood.
And then we started thinking,
think about,
do you own a forest? Do you chop the wood? Where is the wood coming from? And why is it producing that way? Why only this wood? The relationship with the forest is missing. So all these kind of issues, as designers, we can address it till a certain degree only. And that is slightly frustrating. So if we can find a collaboration which is fulfilling for us, then it's great. Or we will maybe would search for something different. So we are interested in that, but we can't see at the moment, maybe it's our problem, how to really address that. Now, for instance, we are doing some lighting, which can be interesting because lighting is a different. It's in a way it's more abstract, so it's more about how you shape light. So that I think we can do it well. But we don't like also the approach of sitting in our studio and designing something and going to a company and
that's what most of the time they ask,
they're just looking for the author. Yeah. And then that's uninteresting for us.
Yeah, they want to design, not the process.
No. But it's a pity because if you think about like at the beginning of the discipline where there were like all the technology, advancing technology, think about the 50 with the research in plastic. The company were asking to designer to do research, not to design a piece. And I think, the discipline after the 90 got really dry. And I think we are still in the dry period in a way, and I think most of the people they are working as designer are doing interesting things. Like think about Dirk van der Kooi with a beautiful 3D printed chair. I mean, why any company is doing it? You know, it's a industrial process, but nobody's embracing that. So it's, yeah, I think we are still in an in-between moment.
I also believe that maybe the whole way this works will change in the future. I listened to Stefan Diaz, the industrial designer from Germany. He gave a lecture for our students, and he explained how even 10, 15 years ago, a company would give you money, and then you could start designing, and then you would get royalties, That doesn't happen anymore. There's no companies anymore with money like this. So what happens now is that a company like Hey or any sort of smart young company comes to see a designer and asks them, shall we do something together? And this means together. So the designer is making, they are producing together. The designer needs to find the production process. So the designer needs to know how to design, then how to produce. Then has to invest his time, which is money. And I asked him, in the end, I said, do you believe that this will grow into a full participation of designer and industry, meaning that you would co-produce and put in money? And he said, this is what it's going to be. So the whole thing, I think, will first fall apart and then will come together in a new way.
But indeed, you know, like when you get just the 3% of royalty on the selling price, and I need to develop everything, I need to spend my time, pay the people that work in my studio to do it, why should I take the 3%? I just fuck up the industry. I don't want to hear about them, you know. But it's what is happening. Think Peter Nake, think about Dirk. There are a lot of designers like Michael Anastasiades. They are really just saying, fuck you, you know, like I'm doing it.
What it was great for us, because we were coming from Italy where industrial design was very important, then when we opened our studio, because we knew this already, we had nothing to lose. We had nothing to lose. So in the moment you know that no matter what you do, you don't earn, then you better do what you like. And that was very liberating.
Well, that if money is no longer the reason, then I think we will change society finally.
Yeah.
We see also a lot of young designers making their own machines. So there's at least 15 concepts where first the machine is invented, or an old machine is sort of transformed. And that is to make yourself, to allow yourself to produce. That is also super interesting, I think. And I was very amazed in Milan the last time that Tom Dixon, Marcel Wanders, and Lee Broom from England are 3 designers, entrepreneurs. So they not only design, they also edit other works. They know how to produce, they know how to sell, they know how to show, they know how to showcase, they know how to talk about it, they know how to make, you know, web presence and so. And they were doing, in a way, the best presentations and the most relevant. And so I felt that was the big contribution of this Milan, is that possibly the designer entrepreneur is going to be sort of the format of the future.
Yeah, we are taking over.
Yeah. Well, the Italians, you know, they show things, but they are not made. You cannot buy them, so it will take 5 years before it's in production. Yeah. So it's actually misleading.
Yeah, I know.
Whereas this, you know, Marcel is asking. What's his name? The fantastic artist, Joep van Lieshout, to make a very strange, beautiful lamp. Well, it is in production, you know, and it's very brave, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe you have to make your own industry.
Yeah, we will. We are thinking about. Yeah, who knows in the future.
We are going slow. We don't have.
Pardon.
May I ask you one question, Juliette?
Oui, toi, vas-y.
I would like to know why you are labeling your designs. Because every design has a label.
Ah, okay, yeah.
That was from a very simple observation. Well, first because a lot of what we do it was material based, so there's almost a recipe behind it. So that came naturally. It was already there in the sample, so it was natural that it was embedding it in the work. But also because it's almost slightly symbolic, but it's just this lacking of information about things. You know, you look at something, you don't know where it comes from, the materials in it, who produced it, and it is a way to create transparency. Yeah, it's about this.
That becomes also sort of proof of it being from you.
Yeah.
It's a pity because people thought it was a talk about design, but at the end it was a talk about the meaning of life and the soul and aura of matter. So I hope that, like me, you are leaving this room with dreamy ideas and new perspective. And I like to thank a lot, and from le fond du cœur, from my heart, Li Edelkoort and Studio Formafantasma for having been here today with us. Thank you very much.